Hello everyone, welcome to another video tutorial on the Code Angle YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to make use of Supabase as well as Angular 17 to create an image gallery application. In this application, users are going to be able to upload images and then retrieve uploaded images so that they can view what they've already uploaded. And we're going to integrate this by making use of the Supabase storage. As you can see on the page, we have a button that says sign in with GitHub, which means only authenticated user can navigate into the dashboard to upload images. And we're making use of the GithUb Oauth service to integrate our authentication. So what I'm going to do is to authenticate myself by clicking on this button so that my GitHub account can be used to authenticate me into the dashboard. As you can see, we have a navbar showing a logout button as well as the details of my account. And we currently have 2 images uploaded. And if I navigate to the Supabase storage dashboard, you can see the 2 files currently displaying on the dashboard. So to further integrate the current implementation we have, I'm going to click on the choose file button and then upload a new image. As you can see, the newly uploaded image gets displayed on our dashboard. And to confirm this, I'll head back to the storage dashboard and then click on the reload button so that we can see the newly uploaded image currently displaying on our storage dashboard. So this is all we'll be building for this project. So as I've said previously, we'll be making use of Angular 17 to build this application. So what that means basically is we're going to take advantage and utilize the newly integrated features in Angular 17 such as signals, the newly introduced control flows, deferrable views, as well as observables to create this project. So there's a lot to learn, so stay tuned. And before we get started with this project, I would like to say a big thank you to the sponsor of this tutorial, which is Supabase. Supabase is an open source Firebase alternative. Supabase is a company that actively fosters collaboration and support to existing open source tools and communities. Some of the features provided by Supabase includes access to relational database to manage complex data, authentication, which could come in form of the traditional email and password, as well as different OAuth service, just like we displayed earlier in this project by making use of GitHub. And there are other form of OAuth service provided such as Slack OAuth services and much more. We also have access to instant APIs. Supabase also provides access to edge functions, real-time subscriptions, storage, and vector embeddings. And when you look at the pricing plan of Supabase, we have the free plan, the pro plan, and then plans for teams as well as enterprises. So if you're a developer looking to create a new product, you can make use of the free plan to see how Supabase service works. And if your product begins to scale, you can consider upgrading to the pro plan so that you can have access to more features. Another interesting thing about Supabase is they have an up-to-date and easy to follow documentation, which means it allows you to seamlessly integrate the various available products into your application without additional stress or complication. So make sure you choose Supabase today as the product of choice to build and manage your application. And with that, let's get started with this tutorial. So to get started with this tutorial, we are going to create a new Angular project by making use of the command ng-new and then the name of the project, which we are going to call ng gallery. So I'm going to press enter. And one thing to take note of is in Angular 17, the components come as standalone by default. So that means every component we are going to be creating for this project is going to set standalone flag as true. So we can now select the style sheets formats we want. I'm going to go with the traditional CSS format, and it asks us if we want to enable server-side rendering. For this project, we don't need server-side rendering, so I'm going to say no and then press enter. So a new Angular project is going to get generated for us. As you can see, our project has just finished generating all the necessary folders and files. So I need to cd into the project directory, so I'm just going to type in the cd command and then the name of the project, which is called ng gallery. And inside of this directory, I'm going to open it up in Visual Studio Code by typing in code and then dot. So this opens up in our Visual Studio Code and we can see all the structure of our Angular project. So the next thing I'm going to do is to install Supabase. So let's start off by installing Supabase. And to install Supabase, I'm just going to run npm install at Supabase /Supabase install.js, that's the command for installing the Supabase package. And while that is installing, I think we have an error somewhere. This is not dot, this is dash, not dot. So I think I made that error right there. So it's Supabase-js. So while that is installing, I'm going to head straight to the browser and then grab the CDN for Bootstrap 5, since the design framework we're using for this project is called Bootstrap. So I'm going to grab the CSS CDN and then paste it inside of the head section of the index.js file, as we have it right here. I'm also going to grab the JavaScript bundle as well. So I'm just going to copy that and head straight to the body section and paste in the script. So I'm going to save and then close this particular file. Another thing we need to do is to create a new Supabase project. What do I mean by this? With the current projects we have, I would like to create it from scratch so you have a deeper understanding on how to set this up. So what I need to do is to create a new project under this current organization. So all you need to do to follow along is to sign up on Supabase using your GitHub account and then create a new organization. Once your organization is created, then you can now get to this stage where you need to create a new project. So for the project's name, I'm going to call it ng gallery, and then the database is asking for a password. I'm just going to generate a password using the Bitwarden package installed on my Chrome browser. So I'm going to paste it in, and then I'm going to select a region. I think the Europe region is kind of closer to my locality, so this helps to reduce latency. And then I'm going to click on create new project. So that's all we need to create a new project. So while the project is creating, another thing we can do is to check on our package, which is the Supabase package. Let's check the current version getting installed. So as of this tutorial, we have Supabase version 2.39 currently installed. So depending on when you are watching the tutorial, you need to take note of that version. And as you can see, for our Angular project, everything is showing version 17. So we also have the latest version of Angular. So you're in the right place for all the latest updates on all the technologies. So I'm going to close the package.json file and then generate the environment file, because we would need to set up the environment variable in a moment. So to do that, all I need to do is just run ng generate environment and then press enter. In previous versions of Angular, the environment folder comes by default, but for Angular 17 and I think also for Angular 16 and 15, it needs to be generated on your end. So we now have the environment folder right here. So that is cool. So the next thing we need to do is to try to get the URL, that is the project URL, to set it up in our environment file. So to do that, all I need to do is to head straight to Supabase once more, and then I'm going to scroll to the settings. You can see the sidebar on the left. So under the project settings, we need to grab a couple of things. So I'm going to click on the API tab we have right here. So one of the first things we need to grab is the project URL as well as the public key, which we have right here. So I think this service role is more suited for the backend, but when it comes to client side integration, I think it's ideal to go with this non-public key we have right here, while this is more suited for when you have a backend like Node.js and the likes. So let's start off by grabbing the project URL. So I'm going to click on copy, head straight to the environments folder, and within the environment folder, I'm going to create a production key and set it to false, since our app is currently not in production. So this is going to be false. And then another thing is the app name. We can just give the app name probably ng gallery, just like we did while creating this application. Another setting we need to do, which is the most important one, is the Supabase setting. So I'm going to put this inside of an object. So I'm going to say Supabase, and then I'm going to create an object. Within the Supabase object, we're going to have the URL as well as the key. So as you can see, we have the URL and the key. So the first one is the URL which we copied previously. So I'm just going to paste it right here. As you can see, it ends with supabase.co, and then the key, I'm going to head back to the Supabase dashboard, and then I'm going to grab this unknown key we have right here, head straight to the environment file, and then paste it right in, then save. I think that's all we need to do in the environment development file. So I'm going to close that up. So the next step is to let's generate the two components we are going to use for this project. So we need the dashboard component and the sign up component. So I'm just going to run ng generate components, and it's going to be inside the components folder, and we're going to have the sign up component as well as the dashboard component. So I'm just going to run ng generate components / dashboard. So I'm just going to press enter. So we would have two components generated for us. So quickly, let's check the Visual Studio Code for each of the components generated. So it's going to be within the app directory. I'm going to open up the components, and as you can see, we have inside the components directory, we have the dashboard and the sign up. So that is cool. So the next step now is to set up the Oauth, the GitHub Oauth. I would like to grab the client and the client ID and the client secret. So what am I talking about? If I head straight to Supabase and I head to authentication, other authentication, if I go to providers, you can see the only thing enabled here is the email. So the next thing I want to enable is GitHub. So to enable GitHub, we need to have a client ID as well as a client secret. So first things first, let's enable GitHub, and then let's go to the GitHub page, my GitHub page specifically, to set this up. So I'm going to go to my GitHub page, and inside my GitHub page, I'm going to go to settings. So when you scroll down, you see settings right here. Just click on settings and you're good to go. And then once you're on the settings page, scroll down, select developer settings. So under developer settings, you have GitHub apps, you have Oauth apps, and you have personal access token. What you need right here is your Oauth app for authentication, making use of GitHub. For the sample tutorial I showed at the beginning of this project, it's called ng image, but I don't want to continue using this. I want to create this from scratch so you have an idea of how this is being created. So I'm going to click on new Oauth app. So for the new Oauth app, it's going to ask you for your application name. So you can just call this ng gallery. And then for the home page, basically the home page is going to be localhost 4200. So I can just paste that right here, localhost 4200, and then the description is optional. So because this is a educational content, we don't need to waste a lot of time on the description. Then one thing you need to notice is on the next input box is asking for our authorization callback URL. This is where Supabase come into play. So all you need to do is to go to Supabase and then grab this callback URL provided for us. Is meant for the Oauth authentication. So I'm just going to copy that, head straight to the GitHub dashboard, and then paste it in. And then that's all we need to do. So we need to just click on the register application button to have our application registered. So quickly, before we proceed, we need to grab the client ID and the client secret and paste it within these input fields in Supabase. So to do that, I don't know why GitHub isn't showing the client secret at first instance. So for whatever reason that is, I don't know, but for me to have access to it, I need to click on this generate a new client secret. So once I click on that, it asks for authentication because I'm using an authentication code to provide two-factor authentication for my application. So quickly, I need to grab the code from my phone. Sorry about this. So we have 064. Now that the verification is complete, so what I need to do is to grab the client secret. So I'm going to copy this client secret, and then I'm going to paste it inside of this input field, and then grab the client ID as well. So that's all. Then we can now click on save, and then we're good to go. GitHub Oauth authentication is now fully configured successfully. So we can now move to the next step of this tutorial, which is to configure the Oauth service in our Angular project. For the Oauth service to be configured, we need to create a service folder. So to do that, I'm going to run the command ng generate service, and it's going to be inside the services folder because we're going to have two services. We're going to have the authentication service as well as the gallery service. So the first one is the auth service. So I think I should probably create the second service while we're at it. So I'm going to run ng generate service. Under the services folder, we have the gallery service. So let's press enter and wait for these two folders to get generated. As you can see, the auth service has been generated for us. So within this folder, within the services folder, we can open up the auth service and then begin the integration of Supabase. So the first thing we need to do is to create an instance of the Supabase client. So to do that, all I need to do is to create a private variable by saying private Supabase, and then I'm going to call the Supabase client. So let's type in Supabase client, which as you can see gets imported above. So within the Supabase client, we're going to need some extra packages. For instance, we're going to need user as well as create client. And we have an error here that says initializer is not defined. So I'm just going to create an initializer by attaching an exclamation mark on top of, in front of that variable. So the next thing we need to do is within the constructor, we need to create the configuration of our Supabase. So let's reference the Supabase instance we created above by saying this.supabase is equals to create clients, and within the create clients is going to take in two variables. That is going to take in the Supabase URL as well as the Supabase key which we created in our environment variable folder. So what that means is we need to import those, but let's see if IntelliSense can help us with that. So I'm going to say environment, which is now imported above, thankfully, dot Supabase. So the first one is going to be the URL, so it's going to be dot URL, while the second argument we are going to have right there is environment dot Supabase dot key, and with that the create client has been configured. So next up is for us to try and track the state of the user. If the user is signed in, we want to implement a particular functionality. If the user is not signed in, we also want to implement another particular functionality. So what do I mean by this? We can just say this dot Supabase dot auth dot on auth state change, and then it's going to take a callback. So the callback has two variables. The first one is the event and then the session. So we're going to make use of the fat arrow to then return what we want to do with these two variables. So before we proceed, I'm just going to console log both. So I'm going to console log the event as well as the session, just to have an idea what it looks like in the console. So we can now create a condition that says if the event is equals to signed in. This is a response that is returned by Supabase by default. So it's not like we're coming up with this from our head. So we're gonna say if event equals to signed in, or if event is equals to token refreshed, then we want to implement a particular functionality. So before we do that, I'm just gonna pass in else. So in case if that is not the case, so I'm going to say else, then we want to integrate something else. So what we need to do next is to create a behavior subject. This allows us to persist the particular state of the user. So to integrate this behavior subject, we're going to create a new variable and say user is equals to new behavior subject, which we need to import, and then we're gonna pass in the user from Supabase, and we're gonna say or null, and we're gonna take in, and it's gonna take in null, just like you have it right here. So if you look above, we have behavior subjects imported for us. So now we can integrate the conditions for this particular event. So if the user is signed in and the token is refreshed, we can just say this dot user dot next, and then we're gonna pass in the session. So I'm gonna say session.user. Then for the else, all we need to do is just to say this.user.next, and we're gonna pass in null since the user is not signed in. So we don't have any session to persist for that particular user since there's no user signed in anyways. So I think that's the right way to go about that. Another thing I would like to implement here, because further ahead we might have issues with it, is the router. So if the user exists, if the user already exists, I don't want the user to be seeing the login page. I think there are various ways of doing this in Angular. I could make use of the auth card to do this, but I think I would rather make use of the features provided by Supabase to handle this. So what I need to do is just to inject the router in our constructor. So I can just say private router and then import the router, the Angular router, just like we have it above. You can see we have the Angular router right here. So with the Angular router injected into our auth service file, we can just say this, not uppercase, this.router.navigate, and then we want to navigate to a particular page, that is the dashboard page, which we've not configured the router for this project. So immediately after this, let's go configure the router for the page so that we would not have issues when we forge ahead. So the last thing I would like to do before we go integrate the router is to create the 3 functions we are going to need. The first function is the sign out function. We have to also create the function to get the current user, and then finally we need to create the function to sign in with the GitHub Oauth service. So in fact, let's start with that. So I'm going to say a sync sign in with GitHub. So within this function, we can just say await, because the GitHub response is asynchronous in nature. That's why we're making use of async await. So we can just say this.supabase.auth.sign in with GitHub, or rather sign in with Oauth. So because the Oauth service has so many platforms, so we need to specify which Oauth service we're trying to sign in with. So I'm going to say provider is GitHub. So we're trying to sign in with GitHub. So I think that's pretty much clear. So that's all we need to do for the function to handle the authentication. So next up, let's just integrate the sign out function. So I'm going to say sync sign out. Within this, all we need to do is just say await this.supabase.auth.sign out, and I'm going to pass in a parenthesis at the end, and finally the get current user. I'm just going to make use of a getter and say get current user, and then within the get current user, I can just say return this.user.as observable, and then pass in the parenthesis. So that's all we need to do for the auth service. So we can now integrate this in our sign up component, but for now let's just deal with the router. So within the router file, we already have a minor configuration showing right here. So all we need to do is to implement it within this array. So this is going to be lazy loaded routes. So quickly we can just say paths, and then the first one we want to create is the dashboard route. So I'm just going to say dashboard, and the next thing is going to take is load component. So I'm just going to say load component, and it's going to return a callback, and we can just say import and then pass in the relative URL to that particular file. So all I need to do is just to say ./components, which is the component folder, and then dashboard/dashboard.component. Then it returns a promise, and then we can just say .then and then pass in a particular parameter, and then we have the fat arrow, and we can finally say the particular arguments within the promise dot the name of the component, which is the dashboard component. So with this, we've created the first lazy loaded route. So I think we need about 3 more routes to create. So the second route is going to be the sign up route. So I'm just going to replace this dashboard with sign up, and then in the imports, I'm just going to replace this dashboard with sign up, and then this is going to be sign up component. So we need to have a comma at the end of this bracket. So with that, we've created the sign up component. So now the home page for the project is going to be the sign up component. So all I need to do is just remove the path. So it's going to be an empty path, and in fact we need to do the same for when the user is trying to access a wildcard component, that is a component that does not exist. So it's all going to be the sign up component. So I'm just going to replace everything with sign up. So let's just do that right here. Okay, I think there's an error. We didn't copy that properly. So I'm just gonna grab it once more. Load components. This should be load components, and then same thing for the paths we have right here. So we can now save, and our route is now configured. So to proceed, we need to integrate the functions we create in our auth service file inside of our sign up file. So in the sign up file, what we need to do is to inject the auth service. So I'm going to make use of the constructor to do this. Later on, I'm going to show you another way of injecting probably services into your components, but for now I'm trying to make use of the traditional way. But by the time we start working with the gallery service, I'm going to make use of the injector to inject services into the component. So for now, let's just make use of the constructor, and we're going to say private auth, and then we're going to import the auth service. And then next up, let's create a function. I'm going to call this function undo auth. So all I need to do is to say undo auth, and then this function is just going to take in something simple. All we need to do is to create a variable. I'm just going to say const response is equals to await. Probably I need to add a sync here, since this is asynchronous. A sync, and then we can say await this dot auth dot sign in with GitHub. So I'd like to console log the response. So I'm just going to say console.log response. I think we didn't spell the response properly, so it's going to be response. So I'm going to save, and I think we've not created the user interface for this particular component. So in the HTML, all we need to do is to make use of some Bootstrap 5 classes. So I'm just going to say div, and then make use of some classes like I'm going to make use of the form dash outline class in Bootstrap 5, and then I'm going to make use of margin bottom. That's going to be 3. I'm going to make use of a container class, as well as display flex, and then let's align items to center. So I'm going to make use of align items dash center to center every item within this div. And then finally, let's make use of the justify content center. So I'm going to say justify dash content dash center, and let's also make use of margin top. So I'm going to set that to 5, and we'll press enter. So that's all the services we need. And then we're going to create a form tag. Probably that's not really necessary, but let's just have that showing. We don't need the action attributes for this. And then within the form tag, we can have the button tag, and this is where we call the function by making use of the click event handler. So I'm just going to say handle auth right here, and within the button we can just say sign up with GitHub, and then let's add a class so that our button is going to look somewhat like a button. So we can just say btn dash outline dash secondary. So and then we can have a button type of button. So let's save and see how our page looks like. But before we can do that, we need to compile the project. So I'm just going to run ng-serve. As you can see, our project has just finished compiling. So let's check it on the browser. So I'm going to open a new tab and run localhost 4200. And this is the button we created, but Angular by default comes with its own default UI templates for the landing page. So we need to clear everything we have right here in the app component.html file. So I'm just going to scroll to the app components HTML file, and I'm going to grab everything we have right there and clear it off. So once that is done, do not forget you need to have this router dash outlet in your app component. If you clear it off, your routing is not going to work. So I'm just going to save and then head back to the browser once again. As you can see, we now have this button called sign up with GitHub. So what I'm going to do is to open the console to see what is going to happen when we click on this button. I'm going to clear what we have right here and then click on sign up with GitHub, and it asks for authorization for me to be able to log in into the dashboard. So I'm going to click on authorize the sugar 10. As you can see, it navigates me to the dashboard and it says dashboard works, and you can see the auth service is console logging the session for this user, which contains the details, that is the username, the user ID, and every other important stuff you have in your object. And you should also take note of the status. It says it's signed in. And if you also check the application tab in our browser, you can see we have this particular key right here, and it's also persisting the data on our browser. So anytime you sign in with Supabase, that comes by default. So the final thing we want to do now is to inject some of these details into the navbar of our project. So quickly, I need to head straight to the app components HTML file. This is where we are going to do the navbar. So quickly, I can just create a navbar in Bootstrap by just typing in the nav tag and then attaching some classes or styles as the case may be. So I'm just going to say navbar. Another CSS class I need to add is called navbar-lights to make our navbar light in color. And then finally the background, also I'm just going to give it a background of light. And then that's all we need to do for our navbar. Then we need to create a div also. So I'm going to create a div and it's going to have a class of container dash fluid, and then we need an a tag. So within the a tag, I'm going to call it navbar dash brand. So within the a tag, we need to call the name of our navbar. Probably I'm just going to name this dashboard. And next up, I would like to display a logout button as well as the name of the current logged in user. So to do that, I'm going to create a button, and this button is going to have a class of btn dash outline dash success, which means it's going to be green, and then we're going to give it a margin of 2 and it's going to be called logout. And then finally, this button is going to be wrapped in a form tag. So the form tag is going to be given a class of display flex because we are going to have 2 items within this form tag. The first one is the button and the second one is the p tag that contains the details of the logged in users. So let's copy and paste the button within the form tag, and then finally let's create the p tag. So the p tag is going to have a class of text dash black as well as a margin left of 2, and then the name for now, let's just make it static test. So I'm just going to type in my name right there. So let's save and then let's see how the page currently looks. As you can see, we have the login button, the name as well as the name of the app on the navbar. So to make this dynamic, we want the name to come from the response when a user is logged in as well as also display it when a user is logged in. So quickly to do that, we need to head to the app component.ts file. To get started in this component, all I need to do is to create the constructor, and within the constructor we need to inject the auth service. Right, all I need to do is just to say private auth, and then let's call the auth service and then inject it. And because we need to route to the sign up component anytime the user clicks on sign out button, so we need to inject the router. So all I need to do is just to say private router and then inject the router. Then let's create the sign out function. So within this function, we have 2 things to implement. The first is the authentication created in our service. So what we have is this.auth.sign out. It's called sign out. We've already injected in our auth service, and then finally we can just say this.router.navigate, and then we can navigate to the / okay, it's gonna be inside of a quote, so it's gonna be / sign up. I think that's all we need to do to sign up. So I think we can test this, and to test this we need to make use of the click event handler. So in our button we can just make use of the click event handler, and then let's save everything we've done so far and let's see if it works. So I'm gonna click on the logout button, but for some reasons it still logs us to the dashboard, and I think I know why that is. The button type is not specified, so this should be type. Okay, before I do that, I'm gonna click on the logout button once more, but take note of the URL. You see a question mark at the end. That means the page is trying to reload. I mean, that's not the behavior we want. That would not allow our functionalities to work. So if I click on the logout, you can see the question mark at the end of the URL. That shouldn't be happening. So to fix that, let's just put a button type. So I'm gonna say type of button. So that will get rid of that default behavior in our Angular application, and our logout should work successfully. So I'm gonna click on logout, and you can see we've successfully logged out, and our current state shows signed out. So we are currently signed out from the application. Now, before we proceed, we need to get the current user data so that we can display the right name in the navbar. So to do that, we need to create our first signal. So if you don't know what signal is, it's a new implementation in Angular 16 and it's now fully implemented into Angular 17. So if you check the new documentation of Angular at angular.dev and you go to docs and you go to signals, you can see, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see some of the questions you might have been answered, like what are signals and what are writable signals, what's a computed signals. You can see everything being answered in this documentation. So feel free to go through this documentation. And before I leave this page, one particular method we are going to make use of is called the set method. Basically, when you look at the explanation we have here, is just to change the value of a writable signal. That is, it helps us to update the value of a writable signal. So what do I mean by this? If I head back to the Visual Studio Code and I create a variable by saying user data and I set that as a signal, because anytime you define a signal, all you need to do is just to call the signal and it's going to be an initial value of an object, an empty object, and you need to import it as well. So we need to import the signal at Angular core, just like we have right here. So that error disappears and the implementation is going to be done within the constructor. So within the constructor, what we're going to do is we're going to say this.auth, because we're trying to get the details of the current user. So I'm going to reference the current user in our service file. Remember, we have a getter called current user, so we are going to subscribe to that. So I'm going to say .subscribe, and then it's going to return a callback, and we're going to pass in a argument of user, make use of the fat arrow, and within this callback we can have this user data, which is our signal, and we're going to set it to the current. In fact, before we proceed, I would like to log the user into the console to see how it comes, the shape in which it comes. So I'm going to save that and let's check the browser, and within our app we can see we are currently signed out. So let's sign up once again and see the shape of the user we are logging into the console. So in our app components.ts file on line 19, you can see we have everything we need. So what we need specifically is just the name, and we can get that within the user metadata. So within the user metadata, you can see my full name is currently showing. So that's what we want to display on the nav bar. So to get access to that, we can just say this.user data, which is a signal, and you can see the various methods available in signal. You have this symbol, you have apply, arguments, read only, but the one we need to make use of is the set. So because we want to set it to the new value, the current value is an empty object, but we want to set it to the new value. So what we can do is just to say user, and I'm going to make use of optional chaining here to get rid of some errors. So it's going to be user.user metadata, user underscore metadata, and then we're going to say full name, because we're trying to get the full name. Just to be sure, I'm going to scroll up a bit. You can see full underscore name. So I'm just going to paste this right here. But we have an error. It says property full name comes from an index signature, so it must be accessed with a bracket notation, that is with a square bracket. So what we have to do, in fact, is to wrap the full name in a bracket notation like this, and with that the error gets to disappear. So now let's try to log the user data into the console. So all I can do is to say this.user data, and then I'm gonna save. Let's see what shows in line 20. You can see the full name now shows in app component line 20. So what we need to do is just to display it on the nav bar. So to do that, let's head to the app components HTML file, and within the app component HTML file, what we can do is to wrap it around, make use of string interpolation by saying this user data, and it's going to take in a parenthesis here at the end. So let's save and check the nav bar to see if the name is now updated. As you can see, the name is now updated and it's showing on the nav bar. But before we complete the authentication part of this tutorial, I would like to conditionally render the logout button based on the login status. So to do that, I'm going to make use of the newly integrated @if block. So I'm just going to say @if, and then it's going to say taking an argument and whatever the argument is, and then we're going to pass it in. And then there's also the else block. So we're going to do it this way, but currently the else block is just going to be an empty tag. So I'm just gonna put a string interpolation and create an empty string inside of that, and then I think this should be inside the form tag. So this should be here. So we can just cut the button and the p tag. So let's cut it right here, paste it inside the if block, and we have an error. We've not passed in the argument. What we want to say is if this dot user data, that is if the user is logged in, we want to show the button and the user's name, else we want that particular tag to be empty. That's basically what we're trying to do. So let's save and see what shows on the browser. As you can see, we are currently logged in. If I click on logout, you can see the details on the navbar disappears because there's no user currently logged in. So that's what that at if and at else block is currently doing. I think it's a better syntax compared to the previous way of handling conditional statements by making use of the ngIf directive. So I think this is a much neater and much understandable format. So let's log in once again. As you can see, the navbar is now showing our full name as well as the logout button. So that's it for the authentication part of this tutorial. So with this, we can now move straight to integrating the major part of this tutorial, which is the image gallery. So to get started with the photo gallery section, as you can see in Visual Studio Code, we are in the dashboard component. So the dashboard component is going to contain our photo gallery, but currently we don't have the design. In order to make this tutorial a bit faster, so I'm going to head straight to the GitHub repo of this project, which is going to be made available in the description box on YouTube. So for now, all I need to do is just to copy the HTML parts of the file and then paste it over here. As you can see, it contains a bunch of Bootstrap 5 classes as well as links to images we already have created in Cloudinary. And we also need the cascading style sheets part of the code, which is the CSS. So I'm going to grab that as well, and then I'm going to paste it in the CSS part of our dashboard component. So all I need to do is just to save both files. I'm going to close the CSS file, as that's all we need to do as far as that is concerned, and then head straight to the browser to see how the design looks like. As you can see, we now have the default images currently showing. So when we click on a specific image, the idea is to show a wider aspect of the image, like to make the image clearer. So it's a modal in Bootstrap 5. So I'm just going to close this for now. So the next step is just for us to start making this image dynamic. That is, we should have the ability to upload images to Supabase. So to get started with that, we need to start with the service. So we need to head straight to the gallery service, and we need to create 4 functions. So the first function will be the function to create an image bucket. We also need a function that would help us to get a specific bucket that has been created in our Supabase project. We also need a function to upload as well as download already uploaded images. So those are the 4 functions we need to create. So to do that, we also would need to inject the Supabase clients in this file as well, just like we have in the auth service. Probably I can grab some code base from the auth service. So what we need here is the Supabase client. So I'm just going to grab that, and then I'm going to grab the import as well, and then paste it inside our gallery service. As then within the constructor, we also need the Supabase create client. So I'm just going to grab that as well, and then paste it within the constructor in our gallery service. So those are the 2 instances we need. We also need to import environment, which is not currently imported in this file. I think that's all we need to do as far as getting the Supabase client is concerned. So we can now start by creating the functions. So the first one is going to be the function to create a bucket. So before I proceed, I would like to show you what I mean by the storage bucket. So let's head straight to Supabase dashboard, and as you can see on the left hand side, you can navigate to where we have storage right here. So under the storage, you can see we currently don't have any current buckets, so we can manually create a bucket from here as well. So what I'm going to do is to click on this new bucket button, and I'm going to call this bucket photos, since we're going to be uploading images. And we have this toggle button that says, do we want to set it as public bucket? So the answer is yes. Let's set it as public, so it's going to be saved in a CDN, and I'm going to save the current configuration. as you can see, the bucket has been successfully created. But before we proceed, we need to do one more thing. We need to set these policies for this bucket. So I'm going to click on policies directly under configuration here, and I'm going to click on new policy. So instead of creating a customized policy, we're going to make use of one of the templates provided by Supabase. So I'm going to click on get started quickly and work with already created templates in Supabase. So I'm going to select the second one we have right here, which is give users access to their own top level named as UID. That is, users will be able to upload images to the buckets based on their UID. So I'm going to click on use this template. So another thing we need to do is to allow select, insert, updates as well as delete operations, so users are able to perform full CRUD functionalities. So I'm going to scroll down. Oh, I think I clicked outside that modal. So once again, we're going to repeat what we just did. So click on use this template and then select the 4 input box we have right here. Then we scroll to the bottom and then click this review button we have right here, and we're also going to click on save policy, and with that we are good to go. So as you can see, we now have full insert, update, select and delete functionalities based on users access to uploading to their own specific folder, which means authorized users would only be able to upload to this photo storage bucket. So now let's get back to creating the functions. So the first function is going to be called create bucket photo. So it's going to be asynchronous, just like we created in the authentication part of this tutorial. So I'm going to say create bucket photo, and within this function we're going to create a variable called data and error, because these are the two responses we are expecting from this particular function. So we have data and error destructured in this variable. So we can now await and then say this dot supabase dot create buckets, which is a Supabase method, and then it's going to take in the name of the storage bucket, which as you can see in the configuration we did in the dashboard is called photos. So we need to have storage after this Supabase. That's why we are getting this error. So it's supposed to be this dot supabase dot storage dot create buckets. So that error is now gone, and then beneath that particular variable we now need to return our response, which is going to be data and error. So I'm going to have data here as well as error. So that's all we need to do to create a bucket. So the next thing is to get a bucket, like to get a specific bucket. So I'm going to copy what we have right here and then rename it to get bucket photo. So with this we also have the data and error destructured in this variable, and then instead of create bucket, this is going to be get bucket, and is also going to be named photos, and we are returning the data as well as the error. The third function we're going to create is called upload. So let's just say a sync, and we're going to call the method or the function upload, and this one is going to take 3 parameters. The first one is going to be the bucket name, and the second one is going to be the path and then the file you are trying to upload to the storage bucket. So let's define this particular parameter. So the first one is the bucket name. So we're going to say bucket is going to be a type of string, and then we also have the path to the storage bucket, which is going to be a part of string as well, and finally we have the file we want to upload, and this is going to be a type of file because we're going to make use of input type of file in our HTML, and the response we are getting is going to be in a file format. That's why we're having a type of file. So the next thing is to create the destructured variables just like we've done previously, which are called data and error, and then await the response by saying this dot supabase dot storage dot from, because we're trying to get the response from the particular storage buckets we are trying to upload to rather. So I'm going to say bucket, and then next thing we have is dot upload, and then we can now pass in the path as well as the file we are trying to upload. Then finally we need to return a response, which is the data and error we have in the variable here. So finally the last method is the download method for us to be able to retrieve already uploaded files. So to do that, I'm just going to create a new variable, and then I'm going to call it, not a variable, a new function rather. I'm going to call it download, and it's also going to take in two parameters. This is going to be the bucket as well as the path. So I think IntelliSense already helps me with that. So I'm just going to have bucket, which is a type of string, and path, which is a type of string as well. And then we have const data as well as error, and it's going to be set to equals to await this dot supabase dot storage. Let's not forget that. And it's going to be coming from the storage bucket because we're trying to get the data from a particular bucket. So we need to identify which specific buckets we're trying to get the image from. And we now, after that, we need to call the lists, which is part of the Supabase API, because with the list we're able to display the data or the photos we are trying to fetch in a particular format. You can configure this however way you want. Probably you want it to come in form of ascending order to descending order, or from descending order to ascending order, but we're just going to leave it to come in a random format because I wouldn't want us to spend too much time on that. But in the documentation you have access to configure the lists, that is how you want the photos to be listed. But I don't think we need to bother with that so much on this tutorial. And then we can now return the data, as well as if there's any form of error, we return the error as well. Then I can save. I think with this we are done with the gallery service. So we can now head straight to the dashboard components.ts file to integrate all our service methods. So before we proceed, I would like us to take a quick look at the user interface of our dashboard once more. One thing I notice is we currently don't have a input field button that allows us to upload an image onto this dashboard. And another thing is I notice our image gallery is so close to the nav bar. So let's quickly make adjustments to that. So in the HTML part of the dashboard, and I'm going to create a div directly under this container class, and this div is going to have a class of margin bottom of 3. So I'm just going to say class mb-3. Then the container div as well is going to have a margin top of 5, so there's going to be some spacing at the top. So within this div we have right here, we need to create our input tag. So I'm just going to type in input, and then I'm going to add a class of form-control, and then we can press enter. So we have an input tag showing right here, but this is not going to be a type of text. It's going to be a type of file. So we have the ability to load images to this particular dashboard, and we want to only accept images, because with files you are able to upload pictures and other media formats including audios, but we only want access to images. So to do that, I'm going to type in the accept attribute, and within the accept attribute I'm going to specify the types of images we want. So the first one is going to be image/png, so we're going to have xpng, and we're going to specify for JPEG as well. So we are going to have image/jpeg, so we can upload JPEG images as well. And then directly under that we can have our label. So I'm going to say label, and then we are going to have a class for this label. This is going to be a class of let's say call-form-label. So let's save and see what we currently have. As you can see, we have a beautiful button to upload a picture. Let's see if we can only upload images. So I'm going to click on choose file. As you can see, let me go to my desktop, and under miscellaneous you can see only images are showing. I have other media files here, but I think only images are showing, so I can only upload images to this particular dashboard. So I think we're good to go with that. So now let's begin the implementation to make these images dynamic, so anytime we upload a new photo. So to do that, I'm going to close the dashboard component HTML file, and in the TS file I'm going to create a constructor. The reason why I'm creating the constructor is to have some sort of injection context. It's not for me to inject the gallery service, because I'm going to use another format called the inject object to inject the gallery service in this application, because ideally in previous versions of Angular you can do it inside the constructor, just like we've done earlier in this tutorial. But for this, we're just going to use the constructor to perform some sort of injector context scenario, and that is because we want to get the data of the particular user currently logged in the dashboard component CS file. So to do that, we're going to create an effects function, and this effect function is going to come from signals. It's part of the new updates available in signals, and you might be wondering what are effects. So quickly I'm going to head to the Angular documentation, and we're going to scroll to where we have effects. So as you can see, this is how an effects method looks like. Basically, the use cases for effects is summarized in these 4 bullet points, and one of them is logging data being displayed when it changes, either for analytics or debugging tool. So that's what we want to use it for in this particular context. We want to get the user objects, the current user that is logged in, the object for that user, and then access the user ID to be specific. So quickly, let's head back to Visual Studio Code, and then we're not console logging anything here, so we need to make use of this data from the auth service. So to do that, first thing, let's import effects. So I'm just going to import effects from Angular core, and then let's inject the auth service. So to inject the auth service, we can just say auth service is equals to inject, and then we are going to import the auth service within the inject object we have right here. So I'm just going to say auth service and then import it. You can see we also need to import inject as well, so I'm just going to import it into Angular core. So this is a new way in which you can inject your service instead of making use of the constructor. I think this is easier. So what we can do now is to say this auth service, and we're going to make use of the current user getter method to get access to the current user, and we're going to subscribe, and then we're going to make use of the callback and then the fat arrow, and within that we can just currently console log the current user. So with that, we can now save and check if we have data for the current user displaying on the console. So I'm just going to open the console to see if we have the current user, and within the console I think we have an error. I'm not too sure. It returns undefined in app component 20. So let's head back to Visual Studio Code. Well, everything seems to look fine in our Visual Studio Code. Let's head back to the browser and see, and as you can see, the object now shows we now have access to the user data. So what we need specifically is the user ID for this particular logged in user, and we can get that right here. As you can see, we have under user, we have user.id. So we are good to go with that. So what I want to do is to set this particular ID into a signal, to be saved into a signal, so we can use it anywhere in our dashboard component CS file. So to do that, I'm going to create a variable above, or probably above the auth service injector, and we can just call it user ID, and it's going to be set to equals to signal, and the initial value is going to be an empty string. So we need to import signal as well. So within the effects, we can now say this dot user ID dot set. Once again, we're making use of the set method, and we can now say user, and we're going to make use of the optional chaining, because the data is sort of asynchronous. So as the data is being fetched, the browser can sort of wait for it to get fetched, so that we kind of avoid some specific type of error. So with that, I think we're good to go, but I think we have an error within here. It says argument of type string or undefined is not assignable to parameter of type string. So I think we need to provide an alternative value in case while the data is still being fetched. So I'm going to pass in an empty string just right beside it. So I think we're good to go. Now what I want to do is to console log this user ID to see how it looks in the browser, to see if we now have the data within that particular variable. So I'm going to save and check the browser once again, and we have an error pertaining to signal that says writing to signals is not allowed in a computed or an effect by default. Use allow signal writes in the create effect options to enable this inside effects. So I think this error message sort of gives us a clue on how to override this error. So we need to make use of allow signal write and set it to true within our effects. So basically what the error is saying is, as far as effect is concerned, you are not allowed to make use of a signal within an effect, but we can sort of allow this manually. So to do that, what I'm going to do is within the effects, I'm going to create a allow signal write context here within an object. So I'm just going to say allow signal write, and I'm going to set it to true, and then we can save. And I believe when we check once again, the error would be gone. Yeah, as you can see, the error is gone, and we now have the error message showing in our dashboard.component.ts file. So we have the current user ID showing right here. So the next step is to get the uploaded data. When the user clicks on this particular choose file button, we want to get the file, the value of the file that is being selected. So to do that, we need to create a new method or function, as the case may be. So we can just say upload photo, and because this is an event, we need to pass an argument right here and say event, and it's going to be a type of event. And within this event, we can now say const input is equals to event.target. And in vanilla JavaScript or React, you might have access to event.target.file or event.target.value, something of sort. But as far as TypeScript and Angular is concerned, you need to set it as an HTML input element for it to work. So we're going to say event.target as HTML input element, and then right below it, we can now console log the files within the inputs by saying console.log inputs.files, and with this we should be able to access the data within the file. And remember, we've not configured this particular function as a click event within our dashboard. So within the dashboard, this is going to be a change event handler, because we are dealing with a file. So instead of a click event handler, because at some point you might need to change the file, so we are making use of the change event handler, and then pasting the function and then passing the event. So with this, we can save everything we've done and upload the file and check what gets displayed in the console. So I'm going to clear the console, click on choose file, and select a specific file, probably this file. And as you can see, we now have on dashboard components line 31, we have access to the file object, and as you can see, it has the name of the file, the size, the type, and the dates, and everything we need to do as far as getting the value required to upload it to our Supabase storage. So that's one huge step accomplished. So I'm going to close the HTML file part once more. So now we can now proceed by trying to make use of the upload function in our service. So what do I mean by this? Remember, in our gallery service, we have this upload function. So we need to try to make use of this function to upload files to the Supabase service. So within the upload photo, what I'm going to do is to call the gallery service. To do that, we need to also create an injector right here. So instead of auth service, what we have here is going to be gallery service, and then instead of auth service here, we have gallery service. So we need to import it as well, and if you scroll up, you see we have it imported right here. So you can now make reference to that particular service by saying this dot gallery service dot upload. And remember, upload takes in 3 arguments. So the first one is the name of the storage bucket. Remember, we named it photos, and then the second argument is going to be the user ID as well as a unique ID. We need to attach those two together, as well as then finally the file we uploaded. Currently, we need to create a variable that takes in the file. So I can just say const file, and it's going to be a type of file, and then we can say is equals to inputs.files. And once the first particular file uploaded, in case we want to upload multiple files, we just want to upload one file at a time, so it's going to select just the first file. And we have an error showing here that says input file is possibly null. To get rid of this error, we need to create a condition by saying if the input file does not exist, that is if it's null, or the input file dot length is equals to 0, then we want to set an error message probably that says the photo does not exist. So we can just return at first. Let's just return this is going to be input, not the if the input file is equal to 0, then we want to return, but we can have an error message, probably an alert or something of sorts within this condition. As you can see, current implementation gets rid of the error, but probably let's just set an error message. So up here I'm just going to have error message file. So it's going to be a signal as well, and currently it's going to be an empty string. And when we scroll down, we can just say right above the return, we can say this dot error message file dot set, and then we can just set it and pass in a new error message that says photo does not exist. So whatever I want to do with this, we can use it in our HTML templates. We can use it anywhere else to display that particular error message. For now, let's just leave it the way it is, and let's scroll down. We still have errors that says it's expecting 3 arguments, but currently we are able to only pass in the bucket name. We've been able to also create the variable to pass in the buckets, the file, selected file, but the second argument, which is supposed to be the path, is what we are trying to do right here. To do that, we already have access to the ID, which we create right here, this.user ID, but we want this bucket to have a unique UUID, that is a unique user ID attached to the user ID. So to do that, we need to install a specific package or a particular package, and the package is called UUID. So what we need to do is to stop our server, and then with the help of npm, we can say npm install --save -dev at types /UUID. The reason why we are including types among this installation is because this is a TypeScript file and we are dealing with Angular, so it's going to automatically help us to attach the type to the UUID. So with that, we won't get any form of error. Otherwise, if you just install the UUID without specifying types when it comes to TypeScript, you might get some errors. So that's why we included that particular condition. So now that we have UUID installed, we can now import it above in our project. So I'm going to scroll up, and then we can just have import version 4 as UUID from UUID. So I think we're good to go. So now we can now create a variable that helps us to get unique IDs anytime we're trying to upload a new photo to the Supabase storage. So let's create the variable by saying const ID, and it's going to be a type of string. We can just say UUID, and it's going to have a parenthesis at the end. So now we can now construct our second parameter. So I'm going to attach a comma to this photos bucket, and we can now say this dot user ID plus / the ID we just the unique ID we just imported, and then we'll finally pass in the file. I believe this is very clear. The first argument is the storage bucket, the second argument is the path, which contains the user ID as well as the unique ID we just created using the UUID package, and then finally we attach the file details we are trying to upload. Then this is going to return a promise, so that means we need to make use of .then to handle this promise. So what we can do next is to say .then, and then no pun intended, we're gonna say data, and then make use of the fat arrow, and within the fat arrow we can now undo the error and the response. So let's first undo the error. So if there's an error, we can just say if data.error, that is if an error exists. We want to set a specific error message, so we can just say this dot, let's just create another variable that handles that particular error message. So here we can just say error message photo, and initially it's going to be an empty string. So we can just say this dot error message photo dot set, and then here we can just pass in backtick and say pass in the name of the specific error we might be getting, which can be in form of data.error.message, and then we can attach a comma to it and say please upload a new photo. So whatever the error message is, we are setting it to the error message photo, and then telling the user or the person using the app to upload a new photo. So that's how we get to undo that error. And in case there is no error, in case everything goes well, so let's pass the else condition and say what we want to do is to, when we upload a particular photo, we want to get it immediately and display it on the dashboard like in real time. I think I simplified that at the beginning of the tutorial. Anytime you upload a new photo, you get the response back to the dashboard immediately. The image gets displayed. So that means we need to create a new method that helps us to get the selected photo back to the dashboard. So to do that, we need to create a new function. So this function is going to be called get selected photo. So for now, let me just say get selected photo. I know we've not created it for now, so we are going to have some errors, so that's fine, because that's the next step we want to do, or the next thing we want to do. So I'm just going to scroll to the top, and then right below the constructor, we can just have it right here, or probably let's have it above the constructor. So let it be yes. So it's going to be get selected photo, and within this function we would need to access the gallery service to download. This time around, we're going to make use of the download function to download the specific file we upload in real time. So to do that, we can just say this dot gallery service dot download, and download is also going to want to know where we are trying to, with the specific bucket we are trying to download the file from. So it's going to be from the photos storage bucket, and then it also needs the user ID for it to authenticate the specific user we are trying to get the photo from, because different users are going to upload different images. So the specific user we are trying to get the image from, we need to specify it in this parameter. So we can just say this dot user ID, and then we're going to specify the path, which is going to be /. Just like before, this is going to return a promise. So we're going to say dot then, and then passing a argument, and we're going to call it data, and it's going to be a type of any, and we're going to make use of the fat arrow as expected. We can now log that to the console. Probably we can just say, for us to log it to the console, for now, let's just say this dot data. We need to put this inside console.log. So I'm just going to say console.log this dot data. So I think it's supposed to be data. We're not trying to reference. What we're trying to get is just here. Pardon my error. So it's supposed to be data. So I'm going to save, and I'm also going to call this get selected photo inside the effects API. So right inside the effect API, I'm going to say this dot get selected photo. I'm going to save that as well, and I think with that we should be able to get a response when we try to upload a photo. So I'm going to clear the console. So as you can see, currently we do not have any image inside of the storage buckets. That's why the data is an empty array, just as you have it right here, because this is dashboard components on line 25. So if I open line 25, you can see this data we have right here is empty, because we do not have any image inside of the storage bucket. If I reload the storage bucket, it's empty. So let's attempt uploading a specific image. So I'm going to select one of the images I have right here. I'm going to open that, and you can see we now have a response. And if I check my storage bucket, I'm sure I'm going to see that specific uploaded image. So let's go there. Let's go to the storage bucket and refresh. You can see we now have that reflecting. If I click on the image, you can see we now have the image displaying. So we've successfully integrated the ability to upload a photo and also download that specific photo, because we now have it showing inside of our console, just as we have it right here. It returns the ID as well as the name. So which means we can now display the image in our user interface. But before we do that, I need to set this particular response into a signal. I want a signal to hold that particular data. So we can just say image data, and it's going to be in form of an array. So I'm going to say signal. Typically a signal can take in any form of data type. As you can see, previously we've been dealing with empty strings, but now the data is coming in form of an array, so we can set in an empty array by default. So right below the console.log, we can just say this dot image data, and we're going to make use of dot set to set the new data, and we can now say data, make use of an optional chaining, and then say data dot data. So with that, we now have the data within this image data, so we can use it in the template of our HTML to display the image the way we want it to show, which is what we are going to do next. So what I'm going to do is to edge to the save, and then edge to the HTML, that is the dashboard HTML, which you have right here, and I'm going to get rid of all the static data for all the images. So let's get rid of all of them but one, and then I'm going to save. So if I check the dashboard, you can see we are going to have just one image currently displaying. So now we can now loop through the image data signal that holds the data. So to do that, we're going to make use of the @for block. This is a new syntax in Angular 17. So we're going to do that above the box lists div. So just like we have right here, I'm going to say @for instead of ng4, which you might be familiar with. You can just say image of this dot image data, and then we want to track each time the image changes. We want to use the ID to track, so that anytime the response changes, Angular is able to keep track of it. So I'm going to make use of the track attribute and just say image dot, let's make use of the name to track, and then I'm going to open a bracket and wrap it around the bracket where the div closes. So we have an error. It says property name does not exist on type never. I think one way to avoid this error is to make use of bracket notation and optional chaining. I'm just going to say name, because the name is unique. So as you can see, the error is now gone. So currently we have one image uploaded. So in the image tag, I'm going to get, okay, no, let's just leave things the way they are. The data attribute you have right here is actually what triggers the modal. So if you get rid of these data attributes, the modal is not going to pop up. So we need to be aware of that. So what we just need to do is to make these src attributes have dynamic strings that shows the image. But to do that, we need to construct the URL for our image. What do I mean by this? If you go to the response currently showing in our signal, it shows the name. It doesn't show the particular link to the image. So we need to construct that. When you check this image we have right here, if I copy the URL and then I paste it in another tab and I press enter, you can see we have that image showing, but we don't get this in our response. So that means we need to construct it. So to do that, I'm going to open up my notepad, and within my notepad, I'm going to paste in that particular URL. So to construct the URL so we can use it in our src attribute, we need to get the CDN link, which extends up to the photos URL, up to the photos /photos, and after /photos, the string you have right here, the ID you have right here is the user ID. Then the ID you have after it showing is the image name, that is the name showing in this response, this particular name. So we need to attach the name, the user ID, and then this CDN link together for us to be able to display the image. So what I'm going to do is to copy this link just the way we have it right here up to where the photos is, where we have /photos. So I'm just going to copy that and then head straight to the TS file, and I'm going to create a variable and say URL CDN, because it's like some sort of CDN that hosts the image, and I'm going to pass it into a signal. So I'm just going to say signal, and then because it's a string, I'm going to paste it inside the signal as the initial value. So as you can see, we can now access it in our template, and then we already have the user ID as well as the name. So all I need to do is to head to the dashboard. I'm going to get rid of this URL we have right here. But to do this, we need to bind the src attributes by making use of square brackets, and then within that we can now say this dot URL CDN. Don't forget to add your parentheses, and we're going to add it to the user ID by saying this dot user ID. Signals, to retrieve information from a signal, don't forget to add the parenthesis just like I mentioned earlier. And then finally we need to have the / to access the specific parts the image is stored before we now call the image.name. This is also going to take in bracket notation, because if you try to access it without bracket notation, you will end up with an error. So I think with this we are able to construct the image CDN. So if we save everything we've done so far and then head back to the browser, I believe the image we upload is going to display on the page. As you can see, we now have the image displaying on the page, but it's taking a while before the image displays. So while the image is being fetched from the backend, we might want to make use of the @defer block to show a loading text, that is, the image is loading before it's being fetched from the backend before it displays. And you don't need to do any form of configuration. This is one of the new features integrated into Angular. All you need to do is just to call the @defer block and then wrap it around where you expect the image to load. So we're going to wrap it around the box div, the div with the box class rather, and we're going to pass in at loading, and then it's going to take in an argument which shows the amount of the minimum time you want the loading states to show, and then we're going to pass in 1 second, and then we can now say pass in a div and say loading. So I think that's all we need to do. I'm going to save what we have so far, head back to the dashboard, and let's see if the loading text shows. As you can see, we have a loading text displaying before the image is being fetched. So you don't need to create any form of npm package or install any form of npm package to have that integrated. It's one of the default features available in the new version of Angular, which is Angular 17 as the time of this tutorial. So the final thing we want to do is to attach this image to our modal. So currently we still have default or static image showing in the modal as we have right here. So but I want, anytime we click on this particular image, to show the image that is being clicked to display on the modal. So to do that, I think that's the final thing we need to do. We need to create a click event in our image that gets the data for the specific image that is being clicked. So to do that, I'm just going to pass in a click event, and then it's going to be we need to create the function in our TS file. But before we do that, let's just create it right here. Even though an error is going to show, we're going to undo that later. And to do that, we're going to pass in the URL CDN, the user ID, as well as the name. Basically what I mean is we need to pass in everything in our src attributes as we have it right here. So I'm just going to copy it and then pass it as an argument in our modal image. And in the TS file, I'm going to scroll to the bottom and then create that particular modal image function. And within this function, we need to create a signal that holds the data so we can pass it into our modal. So what do I mean by this? First off, let's create the arguments. I'm just going to say image is going to be a type of string, because if I console log image, anytime we click on the modal, it's going to show the constructed URL. I don't think we need to test that. So because I know that's how that's going to work. So what I'm going to do next is just to create a variable that says get modal image, and then it's going to be a signal, and the initial value is going to be an empty string, just like we have for most of the variables. So when we scroll back to the bottom of the page, we can just say this dot get modal image dot set. We're going to set it to receive the specific image that is being clicked. So that particular URL is going to be set inside of this get modal image. So all we need to do is just to head back to our HTML file and then scroll to where we have the modal, and within the modal we have this src attribute. So I'm going to clear everything we have right there, and then we can just make use of string interpolation this time around. So we'll make use of double square brackets, and we're going to say this dot get modal image and then save. So let's head back to the page or the browser as the case may be, and then click on the uploaded image. As you can see, I'm going to close the console so we can see the image properly. Let's upload another image. So I'm going to click on choose file, and I'm going to upload one of the thumbnails for my project. I think let's upload the one for Supabase authentication, just we have right here. And as you can see, it uploads in real time. Let's upload another thumbnail. This is for the Supabase embeddings, text embeddings. So let's upload it, and as you can see, it gets uploaded in real time. So once I click on any of the specific image, it's going to open up in the modal for us to see it much more clearly. Same thing happens here. And in the Supabase storage, if we click on reload, you can see all the already uploaded images showing. So I think we've covered everything for this tutorial. You now know how to create authentication making use of the Oauth GitHub service. You've also learned how to work with Supabase storage using Angular 17, and you also have a situation where only authenticated user, because this is the URL of the authenticated user right here. So if another user logs in, this authentication URL is going to be different. So this is for my own account. So anytime a user uses their GitHub account to log in, it's going to show a unique URL. So each images also have their own unique URL, just as we have right here. So I think with this tutorial, you are able to learn a lot. So if you like and enjoy the tutorial, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends, and urge them to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again in the next one.